Hey, everybody. What happened, son?
Stop, mommy.
What,
Stop, mommy.
what just happened?
You hear what I'm using?
Hmm?
You hear what I'm using?
I don't know what happened.
I guess you gotta do it on your phone. Is that a picture? So, do they see me? Do they hear us still?
I don't know, baby.
Are you gonna call his name?
Let me see what happened.
Your phone is connected. Mommy,
What happened?
did it get that to hear? Stop going in my room.
Hey, everybody. It's Lynn Meyer with Men Crying in the Car. We had some technical difficulties today. I do not know what's going on. I don't know what's going on, but we are here. We are back. Men Crying in the Car episode, oh my God, 24, I think. I'm not sure. But today, if you are here, we are celebrating Martin Luther King. We are celebrating all Black men. We are celebrating our history. We're celebrating all the things today. But I do have a special guest, and he's very special simply because, first of all, he could be with his family and doing other things and celebrating the holiday, but he's with us today. And so, just before I announce him, I want to just like give like a little bit of a bio on him. Technical difficulties, everyone. Like everything is really happening today, and we're not going to start over. We're just going to let it flow. um Everything is leaving. I don't even know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. This really must about to be a great show because none of this has happened before. Mm-mm, it hasn't happened before. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring him on and then I'll come back with his bio because yeah, we're just going to go with it today. If you have ever dealt with a sense of tragedy, trauma, anything like that and felt like you never could come back from it? You felt like things were impossible. You felt like, how in the world do I move on? My guest today is going to tell you exactly how to do that. If you've heard the words reborn resilient, you know exactly who I'm talking about. If you ever saw a picture of strength, power, courageous, brave, all that, you know who I'm talking about. You definitely know who I'm talking about. I want to introduce to you right now Mr. Tyron Jackson. How are you, sir?
What's going on, Lynn? I am doing pretty good today. Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I want to apologize. I don't know what's going on over here, but we're gonna keep it going because I know you have invited people, and I want people to hear the story. Please tell us who you are, just a little bit about who you are, and how Reborn Resilient became a thing, and why people need to know you.
Okay. Well, now look, this is going to be very heavy. So for anybody out there who hasn't heard me talk before, I'll go into it. I was an engineer for about 20 years, and I was married to my wife, Malika. She and I met in college at Tennessee State University, and we had started moving forward with our life. We got married. We had us a son. We were both moving up in our careers. We decided to leave from the Midwest to move down to Atlanta, where I was growing as a engineering executive, and she was doing her thing as a director of HR. Take you guys back to 2018. Malika and I were getting ready to celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary. And, you know, people plan different things for their anniversary. We thought we were going to go on a trip for about a week. And so we looked at a lot of different places and decided that we were going to take this trip to the Bahamas. We were going to spend 5 days there. While we were there, we were planning to do a lot of different activities, but one of the activities that we were planning to do was to go on a little excursion. We were on this remote island called Exuma, and their big attraction was to go swimming with the pigs. And so Malika wanted to do this, and I saw it as part of what we were going to do on this trip. So I didn't think anything of it. The day before we go on this trip, I take our son Cameron to Nashville to drop him off with his aunt and uncle. And I tell Cam, don't worry, mom and dad are going to have a good time. We're going to celebrate our union together for this long. I'll be back in 1 week to pick you up, and then we're all going to go on a trip together before the summer comes to an end. Well, the next day, get back to Atlanta, Malika and I, we fly over to the Bahamas. First 2 days are great. We have time at the beach. We have fruity drinks, time at the pool, all the great things people do on vacation. And as we're there, we're starting to talk about, you know, some of, you know, what it had taken for us to get to 15 years together and look ahead to what our next 15 years look like and some of the goals and aspirations that we had and what the 15 years after that and so on would be like. So we were having a great time just reconnecting because we were both very busy leading up to this vacation. On the third day of the trip, we decided we were going to go on this excursion. So we wake up that morning and we go eat breakfast and go to the edge of the resort where a bus is going to pick us and a bunch of other passengers up to go to the marina where we're going to go on this excursion. Now, we have two options that day. You could either do a half-day tour where you get to see part of the island and you get to go swim with the pigs and do a couple other things, or you can do a full-day excursion where you get to spend more time, you go further out at sea, you get to see more of the attractions and so on. And Malika and I talked as we were heading there, and as we were thinking through it, we thought to ourselves, well, I wanted to go back golfing that afternoon at the resort while we were still going to be there. She wanted to go to the spa, so we thought we would just do the half-day tour. So we make the decision, purchase our tickets, do the half-day tour, and as we're walking down this pier, we see the boat for the half-day tour on the left and the one for the full-day tour on the right. We board along with 8 other passengers on this small boat, thinking that this is going to be the most adventurous time of our trip. And lo and behold, it happened to be, but not for the reasons we would have wanted it to be. We take off at 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 9:05, my life had changed forever. At 9:05, I found myself waking up face down on the surface of the burning boat. Unbeknownst to us, Malika and I were sitting above a fuel tank, and there was a small fuel leak that was coming out of this fuel tank. And something created a spark, And as a result, it caused the boat to explode. Now, as I'm starting to wake up and come to out of being unconscious, the reason why I wake up is because my right thigh is literally burning. It's on fire. I can see my skin starting to turn pink and white. I glanced down and I could see my left foot. My left foot was dangling. My ankle bone was out. Blood was gushing out. And I didn't see Malika anywhere in sight. As I'm starting to come to, I can see passengers on the other boat who were doing the 8-hour tour. They weren't too far away from us. And they were yelling to me, "Get off the boat, get off the boat." The other passengers on the boat had already either jumped off or were thrown off the boat. But I seemed to be the only passenger that was still on this boat. And I tried to push myself up, but I crumbled. Try to push myself up again. I didn't know it at the time, but my left collarbone was broken in 4 places. On top of that, I had a broken right foot, a fractured pelvis, fractured vertebrae, bruised ribs, and like I said, my left foot was dangling and I could see blood gushing out. So as I was in this distressed state, the only thing I could do was reach my right hand out, put my fingertips in the ridges on the surface of that boat, and just drag myself away from the flames until I pass out again. Now, gratefully, luckily, the passengers on that other boat, the water was still shallow. They weren't too far away from the boat. They actually swam over and dragged me off the edge of the boat. And I'm glad that they did, because if they didn't, the second fuel tank, it exploded 3 minutes later. So as soon as they got me off, the boat was in complete flames. They get me to this boat, and I find out that Malika was thrown in another direction, and her and one other passenger were actually picked up by a third boat and taken to shore. Whereas for me, they finally got me to shore and put me on the back of a truck to take me to the same clinic that Malika and this other passenger was going to. As they get me there, they put me on a stretcher, and as they wheel me in, that's the first time I heard Malika's voice since we got on the boat. I could hear her moans, her agony, her suffering and pain, and I couldn't do anything about it. As they placed me there, I hear everything, a lot of beeps, a lot of noise, a lot of chaos going on. And there's one doctor at this clinic. And this one doctor, what he does when he finally gets to me, he tells me they're sending me and this other passenger to the good hospital and that Malika would come later. So they put me back on a stretcher, put me on an air ambulance, fly me from Exuma to Nassau, get me to this hospital, put me in emergency surgery. However, as I'm there, I'm thinking to myself, well, Malika must not be hurt nearly as bad because they didn't rush her to the hospital, but she was going to come later. So I thought as I was going to wake up from emergency surgery, she would be there. I wake up in ICU, and I see what they had done was try to wrap what was left of my left foot back to my leg. As I come to, 2 doctors come into the room, and they tell me, "Mr. Jackson, we hate to inform you, but your wife didn't make it." Now I'm thinking to myself, she hasn't made it here yet. That's what you're telling me. But no, they said she died at that clinic, and that they didn't want to tell me before they put me on the plane to fly me there. So what was supposed to be a momentous celebratory time together, celebrating our anniversary, suddenly turned tragic. And the woman that I loved was taken away from me. Now, in the midst of all of this, I ended up having to call our son and tell him over the phone, "Son, you know, Mom and Dad were on a trip, but Mom's never coming home again." Having to hear his voice on the other end, yelling, screaming, trying to understand. And here I am in a hospital bed. I'm trying to console him while I'm heartbroken as well. On top of that, as I said, when I went through surgery, they tried to reattach what was left of my foot, and it caused infection to start going through my body. So I can lay there and I see the EKG monitor over my head. And over the matter of a couple of hours, I saw my vital signs go from green to yellow to red. And now I'm thinking to myself, I'm praying to God this whole time, trying to understand why he took Malika's life, why we had to be on this at the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm trying to process the fact that she's no longer here, but I'm coming to the realization that I'm about to die as well. And start thinking about the fact that Cameron is going to be without a father and a mother. And that what did we do to deserve or cause this to happen? And I go to sleep that night thinking the next time I close my eyes will be the last time I close my eyes. Now, I'm here today, and by the grace of God, I woke up that next morning. A lot of things were happening in the background. And basically, as I woke up, my vital signs were still unstable, but I was being taken away from a hospital in the Bahamas to a level 1 trauma center in Florida, where they said they were going to do whatever they could to try to save my life. And by this time, my mom and my sister, they had arrived in the Bahamas to help try to get us out of there. Anyway, I go to Florida where they're trying to figure out what they can do for me. I go through 9 surgeries over the course of 5 days, with one of them being that they had to amputate my left leg below the knee for me to survive, to keep the infection from spreading and shutting down all of my organs. And there came a point in time where I went through 5 surgeries in one day, and I was still unstable. My vitals were still all over the place. But it was at this time God began to speak clearly to me, because I was frustrated, angry, mad, trying to get some message, some word as to why this had to happen to us. And he told me this very clearly. He told me, Tyran, you're going to have to get to peace with the fact that it was Malika's time to come home. He told me that the life that I had and everything that I knew before was not going to be the life that I was have going forward. He told me if he wanted to, he could have taken my life 3 different times. When that boat exploded, when I was in the hospital in the Bahamas, my vital signs went from green to yellow to red. And also when I was still unstable after going through those 5 surgeries the day before. But he was keeping me here for a reason and a greater purpose. And then the other message that he said was be resilient. Be resilient. Make the choice to be resilient. You have 2 options. You can either feel sorry for yourself, live in pity, and just struggle to survive, or you can make the conscious choice to be resilient and learn and live a life to thrive. But you have to be obedient in doing so. And so it was at that point where it became clear to me that even though I didn't know what my life led to, that to be resilient was going to be a key and critical part of it. And no matter how broken I was at that state in that moment of time, that this was something that I was going to have to incorporate as I move forward with the rest of my life. So that was the beginning. That was the moment in which it became clear to me that even though I was broken physically, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, that I was going to have to go through a lot, and that the road to recovery and bouncing back, even though it was going to be ridiculous and tremendous, it was going to be something that I had to choose to want to get past, choose to overcome, choose to live that life that he had destined for me. And that was the start of what is, what I do and how I became who I am. My business is called Reborn Resilient. I was reborn that day that boat exploded. And if it wasn't for resiliency, I wouldn't be here. And my journey of recovery shows true resilience. And I can go deeper into all of that, the having to deal with the, and Lynn, you understand this. One, just dealing with the loss and the grief and the heartbreak, especially when it happens suddenly, unexpected. That was the enormous amount to have to deal with and overcome. Having to be a parent to a child who lost his mom like that, and how to be there for him and help him understand. I told you earlier that God told me I was going to have to accept the fact that Malika was not coming back. And as I was leading up to this, I mentioned to the fact that she was doing her thing professionally. I was doing my thing. Both of us were on the go a lot. So there would be weeks where me and Cameron would be at home and she'd be gone for a week. Well, to Cam, he was in denial of the fact that she was gone. He compartmentalized as if mom was just gone on a long work trip and that she was eventually going to come back. But this was his way of trying to, deal with, cope, and really ignore or overlook his emotions of dealing with the loss. We all deal with grief and pain in different ways. And so I had to learn how to be there and eventually get to a place where we were actually talking through, going over what was necessary in order to fully embrace what had happened. And then eventually, after getting that out, starting the healing process. After, it took about 6 weeks after I got out the hospital, where I had to go through a period of physical recovery. If you saw me, you would see my left leg was missing, my right foot was in a cast, my shoulder was in a sling, I had a back brace, but I had to get to a point physically where at least I could use crutches, put weight on my right foot, use crutches to get around, for me to be able to be be there for Cam like I needed to be and start the process
Mhm.
of my life back together. Once I
Mhm.
healed to that point, then it was about, okay, emotionally, how do we get through this?
Yeah.
Getting into counseling was the best decision I could have made because that allowed me to start to peel the layers on the pain that I was feeling and then start the healing process for Cam and how we were going to adapt and adjust to life after this loss.
Mhm.
So, and in the midst of it, I had to learn a lot of different things. I had to learn who I was at that point in life because I was
I
not the
can
same.
only imagine.
Malika and I got together 15 years ago. The things that
Mhm.
I like to do, or at least I thought I liked to do, were the things that we like to do. And
Right.
then get that person taken away from you, and you're, middle age, 40 years old, you don't know who you are. So I had to go through this phase of rediscovering who I was.
Rediscovering.
So, and in the midst of it, I had to find my ambitions. I had to learn to be vulnerable in different ways. I had to open up to people and to help because I was helpless. And so
Mhm.
these were situations that really broke me down, but it was really part of the rebuilding of who Tyran Jackson really was or was going to become. And so in the midst of all of this, it helped show me, it increased my emotional intelligence and awareness as a whole and understand that we all have those things that trigger us. We all
Yeah.
have those things that take us back to a bad place. How do we overcome? How do we manage? How are we able to not just function, but move forward powerfully in spite of those while we're trying to strengthen those weaknesses and to be able to gain that emotional um, strength to be able to move forward. So that
I
was
hear I hear your story because first of all, I'm so glad that you're here. Hey, Tashana's here. Yay. Because I was just about to talk about you, Tashana. When she told me about you, I was just like, okay, please connect us because we have to get him on. And I'm glad she told me what she knew of your story. And then when you and I had conversation with our meeting, I'm like, I'm glad you told because had I heard all of that today, mm-mm, I know I would be like a mess, like tissues and every. I know I would be a mess. Um, I cannot even imagine that, to live through that, to go through that, to experience that with all of what you said, the love of your life. She was there, you were there for anniversary. She's no longer there. Your child is at home. Like I mm-mm. And the fact that you tell it so matter of factly with so much compassion and strength, and then hearing it, I'm just like, how? And I'm pretty sure people are like are here now and gonna watch the replay. Like, how? Like, you just gave us this tragic situation, and then, oh, but reborn resilient. Some people in their head are like, how does that connect?
yeah.
Like, I just lost the love of my life, and then physically, I'm not the same. And then my child is at like, how does one do that? How?
Well, so but God, even though I was mad and angry throughout this whole time, I had to go through a period of healing and recovery. And you hear people
Yeah.
talking about, okay, I've got to heal, I got to grow. Is one thing if it's something that you want to do, it's not a necessity. But you say, okay, I'm in a good place and,
Hmm.
and I want to heal, but you still go off and function like you've been functioning before.
Yeah.
It's another thing when you are broken to your core. I'm telling you,
Hmm.
I couldn't move. I lost my rock, my best friend, the mother of my child, my lover, all of that in one. And here I am. My identity is lost. And on top of that,
Hmm.
so and this is where I get deeper in it. The depression, the
Hmm.
anxiety, the frustration. I'm laying in this bed and I can't move. I have to have my sister push me out the bed and push me in a wheelchair just to be able to. As a man, that's a hard thing to have to come to grips with. And that you can't get up and go to the bathroom to pee when you want to go pee or do anything like that. And then on
Yeah.
top of the PTSD from waking up on that boat,
Hmm.
survivor's remorse.
Hmm.
Why wasn't it me? Why did she have to be? All of these were things that, from a mental health standpoint, were driving me crazy. And I was a stable person. I was someone who had his stuff together and was the person that people came to when they needed help. And I was,
Yeah.
before I was more stoic. I had my emotions reserved. And then all of a sudden I find myself when I'm just crying for no reason and I don't understand, I can't stop it. And so this is some of the reality. And as a Black man, that's a hard thing to realize your weaknesses and admit to it.
Mm-hmm.
And however, I was at a place where I understood, or at least I won't even say I understood, but I knew I couldn't do it by myself, and that help was going to be necessary for me to actually heal. And even though I grew up in the South, in a small town where Black people think that only crazy folks go to see
Go.
therapists.
Oh God.
so that was the I guess the starting point from an understanding of what it. But I realized that if I didn't get help, I was going
Mm-hmm.
to be on a real bad path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we
Where did
start
you find it? Like, but where did you find? Oh, let me read. It says
being
grief counseling is a must because I had to go when I lost my twin and my mom. That was one comment. To Shauna was like, I love Mr. Jackson's testimony. Absolutely, because it is truly a testimony. And yes, grief counseling. Yeah, when you are ready to go, it's absolutely necessary.
yeah.
Man, like, when did you realize? You said, okay, I really need to get some help mentally, emotionally, because again, like you said, your life was turned upside down, however you want to describe it, like destroyed, whatever. And then for you to say, all right, because I'm not functioning in the way I used to function physically, I now need to get some help because I'm by myself. My partner is gone. I'm a single dad now. Like, when did you say, I got to do something? Because, like you mentioned, depression, anxiety was probably getting ready to take you over. I'm not even sure how long you were in a depressive state or whatever, because I cannot imagine. I keep saying that I can not imagine losing my spouse, especially to that way. And like, when did you realize it was time to get some help?
So it was about 2.5 weeks after the incident occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'd just gotten discharged from the hospital in Florida, and I was staying at my sister's house. It was about the third night that I was there. It was
Okay.
3:17 in the morning. I remember waking up in sweats and in tears because I was starting to have the flashbacks
Mm-hmm.
about waking up on that boat, about hearing those screams and moans of agony from Malika, about realizing that my left leg is gone, about all of these things that were really starting to kick in, the fear of what life was going to look like. I was sad. I was crying uncontrollably. Like I said, at this point, and the sad part about it is that would continue for nights on end. And then 3 days after that, I had to go through the something I didn't want to do, but I had to go and lay Malika's body to rest, and had to go through that exercise where everybody who knew her was there and trying to console. And emotionally, I wasn't prepared for it. Physically, I was being my best friend. He was pushing me around in a wheelchair and basically protecting people from hugging me
Mm-hmm.
because my shoulder was still in a sling and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, well, this was what I was having to deal with. But just realizing that emotionally, I wasn't strong enough to deal with that pain, that hurt. And then on top of that, at this point in time, Cam was staying with family. He'd go from staying with one of Malika's cousins and her family for a couple of days to his other aunt and uncle to his grandmother, while I was still trying to focus on what it was going to take for me to get back together. And now
Mm-hmm.
this is during the summertime. He's out of school and everything. But a month after that, school started back for him. And I realized because we were having these conversations, we were having these talks, but still it was hard for him to have to deal with all this change that he never asked for. But it was when I realized that I was not going to be strong enough alone to deal with that depression, that anxiety, and that guilt. of having to know that Malika was gone when I said, okay, I need to get some help. So it was at that point that, and I had a really good relationship with my doctor. He was actually the doctor for me and Malika, and he knew about what happened. And I reached out to him and I said, Doc, I got to get somebody who can help me deal with this pain and this grief. And even though he was a primary care physician, he knew of multiple therapists who would be able to work with me and Cam to be able to start the process of being able to deal with that pain and that grief. And so he was like, as soon as you get back to Atlanta, you need to see these people and figure out who to work with you. And that was one of the most, you talk about people helping and giving to others when they're going through this pain. Him providing me those resources and those people to talk to who were versed and knowledgeable and actually able to give that insight was the greatest thing that could have happened, because that's when I was able to finally start the process of dealing with my pain and Cam
So what
dealing
did
with
that
his
look
and
like?
adapting to the change.
Was it like every week, twice a week? Like what was the time frame of
It,
that? Like what did that look like
it
for you?
started, yeah. So for me, it was 2 months after the incident occurred. We were back in Atlanta, and at that point in time, I had my mom living with me, and me and Cam, we were back in our house again. Now that's a whole nother thing, coming back to the house that she and I had built together, and being, seeing the memories of her all over the place was a whole nother layer to it. But what it looked like was going to, for me, it was going to counseling twice a week to start out. And for Cam, he went once a week. And so this was just part of our routine to be able to at least start to express what we were truly feeling and not ignoring or overlooking it, or, really get to that place of being honest about the situation and circumstances. How do we honor Malika and her memory and not let those thoughts of what we had prevent us from being able to move forward in life, because we still had to live through this. And then the other part of it too that was really eye-opening was the fact that everybody grieves differently,
Oh
and
yeah.
we have situations where a lot of people knew us and a lot of people were wanting to um, share their opinions or thoughts on different things. And I equate it this way: she was an AK. She had a lot of line sisters. They would probably see each other once a month, once every 2 months. After that happened, every time that they would think of her, their grief would come back. So over, let's say, a 3 month span, they might have thought about it, 4 to 6 times. And they'd be wondering why, I'm not feeling the same way they're feeling. Well, I had to live with this every day. This is the person who I woke up next to for 17 years total. And so it's like I was having to deal with other people's grief that they projected on me. And I was having to deal with my own as well. And it was it's complicated. You hear people talk about things are complicated. It's very complicated when you're dealing with your pain and others want you to stay in a place that you were once at. And God
Yeah.
told me to be in denial of the reality of the situation, that I needed to accept it if I wanted to move forward in life and do the things that He had destined and planned for me. Well, it's hard to get to that place of acceptance if everybody's trying to pull you back in that denial,
Yeah.
because you're in denial. And so this is one of the things that I learned through my journey, and it helps me when we talk about reborn resilient. I help those who are going through trauma, tragedy, or transition make their transformation so they can be triumphant again. And specifically, I help those widows and widowers who are still feeling paralyzed after the loss of their close loved one be able to get back to life again. And it
Well,
sounds
before you go into that, because I definitely want you to talk about that.
okay.
And I'm listening, and I think this has been talking with you. I think I've been the most quiet, simply because I want the people to hear your story. And I'm still very intrigued, and like I don't know, like I'm at loss of words, because again, I just think about like my life, like how in the world, like how would I have handled that situation? and just to hear you talk about it and how what you went through. And I know you just like on the surface with us, but I just want to know like what were the emotions that you dealt with on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, on a minute to minute basis? Like, was it like up and down? Did you have those days where you want to just fight, you wanted to cry, you were happy? Like, what did that look like for you?
So I'm naturally an optimistic, positive person. And I try to be as positive and optimistic about everything that was going to happen, even though this was so tragic, so
Mm-hmm.
sad. But it was extremely difficult to try to be in that space when I've lost pretty much everything that I had known to have, and the person
Yep.
who was supposed to be with me through it all. So I would go through, fits of being angry, being pissed, snapping at people, and that wasn't my personality. That wasn't
Mm-hmm.
who I was. I was frustrated, and keep this in mind too. In the midst of just the emotional loss, physically, I'm having to come to grips with the fact that I might not ever walk again. That was the reality of the situation too. I've got trauma from multiple directions that I'm having to cope with and deal with. If you go to the doctor today and they tell you we're going to have to amputate your left leg, that alone is going to change your outlook on life. Now take that on top of that, magnify the fact that okay, somebody was responsible for this accident that resulted.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a
Mm-hmm.
whole other area of anger. Then my wife is
Mm-hmm.
gone; she's taken away from me.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
of these, and so I've gotten, I share it in a very um, intentional manner. But when we start to get deep into what I was facing, I was having to, I started to not trust people because
Yep.
there were people who were trying to come in my life who were on the surface wanting to help, but ultimately they had their own motives for wanting to get attention or see that they were showing off to others that, oh, we're here to help Ty and Cam out. And so now I'm having to deal with things I shouldn't even have to deal with. People being people, and some people don't have the purest. So anyway, that's a whole other
That's true. That's yeah.
and so
Yeah.
and then this whole other thing too. When you start dealing with in-laws, when something like this happens, everybody doesn't want to believe the best. I had people
Yeah.
thinking I was responsible for it. That just but what that is their grief coming out
It
in the form
is.
of anger and wanting to blame and wanting for
Yeah.
somebody to be responsible for who they can see and touch. And
Mm-hmm.
so to have to deal with all of these things, and then and I didn't mention this too. I was knocked unconscious 5 different times in the midst of the accident occurring to to get into the hospital. I had short-term memory loss for 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as an engineer, somebody who's used to remembering real specific details and knowing, how to be able to answer and everything that went on. I couldn't even remember conversation 5 minutes before. So now I can't even identify myself as being good at what I was good at before. So that's the whole, identity psychological side that it's a whole nother element to it as well. I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering what's going to happen to me if I'm going to lose my memory and my ability to be able to be coherent with people,
Yeah.
because you see this happening and it's not who you are or who you were. But I realized that I had to heal and recover from that as well. But
Mm-hmm.
it's I've been through a lot. But
You've definitely been through a lot. And for me, it's like perspective. Like I love how God allows me to hear your story, other story, just to say it's not this it ain't that bad. It's
yeah,
it's not that bad. And when I do allow myself to have a different perspective, um, because of a story like this or a testimony like this, it makes me then say, Lord, I just thank you because I really thought I'm over here complaining. Let me just say that. I'm over here complaining with my life and this, and this, and I can't get my children to act right. Da, 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 da. And then you share something like this. It's like, oh, I'm tripping because this right here, that's nothing.
yeah,
the fact that you can share this story and bless people with it, even it's so tragic, and you can bless people with it, with sharing the story, and then seeing who you are today. Because I see you on the stages, I see you speaking to people. Um, I've been watching your videos ever since Tashana told me about you. I started following you, and so I see from what could have been a situation where you could have just unalived yourself. Anything could have happened. You could have stayed in a state of just like, my life is over, but you turned it all around. And I know that's where Reborn Resilient came from. And you told me that that's where God gave it to you. When you created Reborn Resilient, was it for you at first and then you decided to help people, or you created it because you say, you know what, out the gate, I'm getting ready to help some people? What was that?
So this is it's funny. It's funny how God works. I had no thoughts of speaking, of being in front of people, or being a symbol of hope and inspiration for others. That was
Mm-hmm.
not the intention. I take you back about, it was about 8 or 9 months after the accident. A friend of mine, he worked for a life insurance company, and they were having a conference, and he asked me if I would come and speak and share my story. And at that point in time, I was like, I'm still, emotionally trying to heal. I'm still trying to put the pieces back together. I'm still not ready to share this in front of anybody. And I had no intentions or desires on doing it. But I decided to do it. And I started trying to put together some content to be able to share and explain, what goes through the mind of someone who loses their spouse all of a sudden, and the emotions that they're feeling, and how their agents can be able to connect with the psyche of those people. Excuse me. And then as I was on the stage, I realized that I needed to scratch that. I need to speak from the heart. I need to tell what I was feeling, my emotions, my story, and go into them seeing what it was like from my perspective. And I say it was my worst talk that I've ever given on the stage, but it wasn't bad, but it was not structured the way that I know to do things now. But at the end of it, I realized that people were coming to me talking about how it changed their whole perspective on life, and how there are certain things that they had been putting off, or they said that they were going to do, that they knew that they needed to go for and address now. It helped some people who were going through divorces to say, okay, let's work this out. And what I realized is, you never realize how great of an impact what you've gone through is going to have on the people who are assigned to you. And I got asked to come and speak at another one. And before I knew it, I was getting asked to speak at these different events. And then I started getting paid to do it. And that led me to say, okay, well, God, you told me you were going to take me down a different path. Is this the way you want to use me? Use me as a vessel to be able to give people that sense of hope and inspiration. And at the same time, help me find my true purpose and how I'm going to be able to give back. Now, he did tell me at an earlier point that Malika had done the work that she was supposed to do here. She did a lot philanthropically. She helped a lot of people get their careers started doing what she did in HR. I had a front row seat for all of that. So I got to see, but I wasn't as active as much. And I realized how that was sort of preparation for me to be able to go into this chapter of my life, where I realized that there is power, there is truly something to be said about identifying and showing how great resilience is when we're dealing with the adversities and obstacles that we're facing. Because the reality of it is that we're all dealing with something. Now, how do we cope with that, and how do we deal with those breakdowns and those challenges and those obstacles, and find that resilience to not just cope with it, but to use it to create positive growth and become better versions of ourselves and better versions for the world. And so that's part of what I've learned in my journey. And that gave me a reason to say, okay, let me take this seriously. Let me go get a coach to help me learn how to be a better speaker. Let me learn what it takes in order to actually do this at a higher level on higher and bigger platforms.
Yeah.
And to really be able to make the impact. Because what I realized is that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that I'm supposed to touch.
Yes.
was part of the reason why he kept me still here. And
That's
so,
right.
being the case, then why would I not go out and do it? And the other part of it too is the fact that there was a certain sense of fulfillment, of joy,
Mm-hmm.
of knowing that you have changed somebody's life.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it's sad that Malika lost hers, I'm getting to do so much to help so many others forward and get past their challenges, either through my speaking, through my books, through my coaching directly. All of
Mm-hmm.
these things are ways of being able to create the change. And that's part of what
Yeah.
I was looking for.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you said that because we were definitely getting ready to go into this. So tell us about Reborn Resilient. Tell us about your speaking engagements, your books, where we can find them, your coaching program, like all that. Because I tell you, every single time I have an interview with a gentleman, there's always somebody that comes back and say, "Hey, who's the person again? I didn't get the information. How do I reach out to them?" So just let us know, like, where to find you on social media. Tell us about your programs, your books, all of that.
So if you want to find me, the easiest way to find me is if you see my name in this little blue box right here, Tyran Jackson. Look that up. Tyran Jackson, either on LinkedIn or Facebook, or if you're on Instagram or TikTok, it's actually Tyran Jackson Official. If you go there, if you follow me, I'll send me a message. I'll reach back out to you. My business is called Reborn Resilient. So if you go to rebornresilient.com, and you can go there, you can see some of what I've got going on, some of the different events, some of the platforms that I speak on. I've spoken for the NFL to help inspire and motivate some of their players, for a number of major companies, for the military, for the Air Force, a lot of different places. And part of what I do now is not only inspire them, but train them on what it really means to build resilience, to be able to find the resilience within yourself. So when you do face adversity, you don't crumble and break down and wonder how you're going to get through it. There's a certain level of emotional awareness and strength that we need to deal with the challenges that come up and not let them cause us to lose control of ourselves and also impact the emotions of the people around us. So that's what I help people through my resilience workshops, through my resilience-based keynotes. And I work really with leadership teams, with sales organizations, with a number of different people as far as the speaking and training side. For individuals, what I do through Reborn Resilient is, as I said earlier, I help those going through not just trauma, tragedy, or transition, make the transformation be triumphant again, but really help those through who are dealing with grief. My grief recovery program is called Happily Ever Interrupted. And it's for those who have lost someone close, and it's been 3 to 6 months and they're still on this roller coaster of depression, anxiety, and they don't have any hope with what is ahead with life. Help them get through that grief process, because there are certain things we can do to accelerate that healing process, to get through that grief and get to that place of acceptance of your reality. And then from there, build the resilience and start designing what the life that you truly desire. Part of that comes into, you'll see my core values and stuff back here, but it gets into getting the right habits and the consistency and the discipline, and have clarity on what course of action you need to take to optimize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses, and get to the financial, to the career, to the relationship desires that you have. And also dealing with the healing process emotionally of losing that person. For those who were in love, how do you get back out there again and find love? How do you trust others again? These are things that, as widows and widowers, we really have to be mindful of if we want to move forward. Then lastly, I just want to invite people, if you want to learn more about my books, if you go to my best-selling book is called Choosing Resilience. If you go to choosingresilience.net, you can find it. You can visit me on any of the other sites and get it as well. If you want to buy the book, don't go to Amazon. Go to my site, because as an author, you know that you get more from people coming to you. And plus, I personally sign and autograph every copy that goes out. And then just moving on from that, one of the other areas where I help those is I was a part of another project to write another book called Widowhood is for Women Men Just Remarried. And it goes into the psyche and the thoughts and the way that the society looks at men who are widowers, and doesn't necessarily provide the same level of sympathy, of support as you're trying to bounce back to your loss, as well as the fact that men have different perspectives as it deals with getting back out there into the world where there may be, physical desires, but emotionally you're not healed and ready yet. So what things to be mindful of? My premise is to not only help show you the right path, but to identify the pitfalls that you can stumble upon along the way of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And
All that is so, man, I tell you, I'm so glad that we were connected because, again, I know they're gonna be hitting you up. I know because there's a lot of men that want to have brave spaces to
yep,
talk about that, you
yep,
know. And the fact that this right here was just another testimony, like, you know what? I keep seeing men over and over and over on Men Cry in the Car, just sharing their emotions, just talking about just healing. Because again, and I say this like almost every time, we know you cry in the car. You cry in places where you find solitude, but we want you to get out of the car. And
yep.
people like you can help. Every person that has come on has something to give on this platform to another brother, to another man, to another son. And I just thank you for it. I thank you for sharing your day with me, your time with me. I really appreciate you. I definitely want to stay connected with you because this right here, Man Cry in the Car, is a movement. It's not just a podcast, it's a movement and it is necessary. And you guys know what you're talking about. You guys need each other. I'm just here as a vessel, as a host. But I thank you so much. I thank you. Any last words? Like maybe it's someone that's watching and say, "Oh, yeah, okay, that was him. He got, yeah, okay." Is there something that you would like to say for that gentleman that's watching right now, like to give him some hope or give him just a word of encouragement?
I want everybody to listen about resilience. Resilience is not about regaining what was lost, but it's about reshaping what still remains. And it's what you do with what still remains is going to determine the narrative of your life story. So no matter what has happened to you in your past, whatever breakdowns, whatever challenges, whatever bad things that have occurred, we can't always go back and fix that. But keep in mind, what are you going to do with the cards that you're dealt with now to be able to create a better, bigger, brighter future for yourself, for those who love you, and for those who are going to be impacted by your presence here. There's so much more that we have to do in the world that we need to be mindful of. And I want to say this too, Lynn, if I can. I want to thank you because one of the things you mentioned earlier is, creating that safe space for men. And I feel as though that these things are so necessary. And one of the things that I look to do is to sort of, I'm very open, I'm very vulnerable, and I am someone who will share my emotions and my thoughts. And I was not like that before. But in going through what I realized, there's a level of happiness and joy and liberation that comes when you're able to speak openly about how you feel. I like to feel like I crack the door open for others who need to come down there and make it okay. So for the fellas that are out there who are thinking about these things, look, if you keep all these thoughts in your head and to yourself, there is no way for us to help. But we can help and we can support and we can provide real insight for each other to be able to not just deal with the traumas that we're dealing with in the world and the stresses that we face every day, but the micro traumas that are stacked on top of those things. I equate it like that Coke bottle that you shake up and everything. Every time something happens to you, you're shaking it up more and more. And then all of a sudden, what's going to happen? If something triggers you, you're going to twist that cap off and everything's going to come out and you're not going to be able to deal with it. But with what we do through these opportunities to be able to just let a little bit of it out, now we're twisting that cap off real slow, letting a little bit of that pressure dissipate so we can at least be able to function and live. And so look, come with me, follow me, Tyran Jackson Official or Tyran Jackson. We can learn more. We can chop it up. We can really go into some detail. If you have any questions or anything you want to do, look, I'm an open book and I keep my schedule open for people who need help. So feel free to reach out to me and we can move forward from that standpoint.
I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. I thank you for your words. I thank you for your vulnerability, your transparency, your testimony, and just you being you, because I can tell that you have touched many lives. You have impacted every single person that you have connected with. And I know that. And I've only just spoken with you virtually, and it's real. And I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you too,
What
Lynn.
I want you to do is just stay back for a second. I'll take you down because I want to talk to you after, and then I'll end the show. Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Take care.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for sharing the live. Please make sure you subscribe. Men Chronic Car podcast is only housed here at YouTube now. We're no more on Facebook, even though Tyrion did stream on Facebook, but the podcast is here on YouTube. All right. Y'all know how I do. Men, I see you, I hear you, and I support you. Until next time, talk with you soon.